Joining us right now is the former Speaker of the House, Fox News contributor, author of the new book, Trump versus China, Facing America's Greatest Threat, Newt Gingrich. And Newt, it's always a pleasure to see you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Great to see you.
Congratulations on this book.
Thank you.
It's an important topic. I would say, arguably, this is the most important topic of our time.
Oh, I think it is. It's the topic which will define whether or not our grandchildren speak Chinese or whether or not we still remain America. And I think we should not underestimate how formidable the Chinese are.
And they are right now trying to become the world's largest superpower economically as well as militarily.
And it's important to remember, I mean, the best that Trump can get is about 10 to 20% of what we need, because the Chinese have gotten away with so much cheating over the years that to wrench them from where they have been to where we want to get them, you can't. I don't think you can do it in one round. I think you got to hit them, get something, come back again in 2 years, hit them again, and recognize that this is going to be a long, difficult struggle.
But what I love about this story is that American businesses are finally waking up to the competitor that we're dealing with in terms of China. I mean, you look at the way they're bullying American companies, the way that they're rounding up Muslims and putting 1 million Uyghurs in prisons, and not to mention, I'm obsessed with this quote from Xi Jinping that I keep mentioning on this program. He said to the Prime Minister of Nepal last month, anybody who tries to divide China, he was referring to the Hong Kong protesters, anybody who wants to divide China is going to find their bodies crushed and their bones smashed.
Yeah, well, I think Xi Jinping is sometimes showing you what a dictator he really is.
Wow.
But the thing to remember here is that the Chinese communist dictatorship, and that's what it is, it's a Leninist totalitarian system. And they are deeply committed to replacing us. They're deeply committed to building both an economy, a military. Much of what they've done is very smart. I mean, we should not underestimate these people.
Yeah.
They're very, very smart. And I think, for example, you can't expect an American company to stand up to China. So we need to build a countervailing system where if they threaten an American company, we hammer 10 Chinese companies. And we just say, if you're going to start playing this game, we're bigger than you are, you need our market more than we need yours, and we are prepared to protect our companies, but not blame a company which really doesn't have any ability to stand up to a sovereign dictatorship.
Yeah, that's why President Trump has changed the conversation on China, Jack.
Yeah. Newt, how do we get the message across to middle America? So, you know, this is something that every American should be supporting President Trump and the Trump administration for, but you really don't see that. When you see, you know, leagues like the NBA, National Basketball Association, not really backing American ideals. You know, they're standing up for the dollar. And so how can we get this message to really resonate and stop putting, you know, our want for money over American principles that built this nation?
Well, look, I think that's part of what the argument is going to be about, and part of why I wrote Trump versus China, because I realized that the old establishment made so much money in China that they, you know, oh, so they're a dictatorship. Oh, so they're a long-term threat. But this month, I got a lot of money. And so, I mean, the other week, Mayor Bloomberg gave this interview where he said they're really not a dictatorship. Now, I mean, you have to be almost, it's inconceivable why Bloomberg would have said that. They're clearly a dictatorship, but
Biden said they're not a competitor, right?
That's right. Well, but in Biden's case, I mean, why would you think? I never hold Biden accountable for anything he says because I don't think he does. So why should we hold him more accountable than he is?
Yeah.
But I think that the long term, I mean, it is encouraging, for example, that Senator Schumer has been pretty good on this one topic at backing up the president. But I think even the president, who is doing the right thing in the right direction, doesn't realize yet how big a challenge this is going to be, whether it's Huawei and 5G, or it's the South China Sea strategy, or it's the Belt and Road Initiative. I mean,
these are national security issues. Here's a quote from the book. We would be incredibly uncomfortable living in a world defined by the Chinese Communist Party's censorship, surveillance systems, and the pattern of jailing anyone who disagrees with the government. Yet we have opened up world trade to China's. We now find ourselves in a long-term competition with a system that is antithetical to our own. Dagan.
I'll answer Jack's question. The American people who voted for President Trump, That's why they voted for him. They know what we've traded to China for nothing, because those jobs disappeared because of the giant, essentially corporate tax break that was handed to American corporations as they shipped their labor overseas. Our jobs disappeared throughout the hinterlands, because that's how the liberals see the middle of the country, throughout the South. Textiles, even tobacco, furniture manufacturing, you name it. Those middle-class jobs that used to have a safety net disappeared. And what did we get in exchange? A bunch of plastic crap filling our front yards and our basements that's made in China. That was the trade-off. Now you can go work at, maybe you can get a healthcare job as a caregiver, maybe you can go work at Costco, but you get cheap stuff made in China. That was the trade-off, and people in this country watched it go for 40 years. And technology executives have watched this go on for 40 years, where China, our door was wide open.
Technology investors have been, CEOs have been robbed.
Our door was wide open to China, and they have infiltrated not only our front yards, our backyards, our basements. They've infiltrated universities. They've infiltrated our companies. And in order to get even to operate in China, you had to set up a joint venture. And then they turned around and stole from these major technology companies. He has given cover, the president has, to every company to finally say, no more. We're dictating the rules.
By the way,
now.
they're still
Sorry for the soliloquy.
No, you're right. They're still doing it, though. You know, we need an enforcement action in any deal to show the Chinese and to make sure that when they sign on the dotted line, they're not going to next week come back and steal intellectual property and continue it, that there are consequences for that.
Well, and I mean, to show you how sobering it is, we did a podcast recently with a professor who teaches at Hunter, who is Chinese, who was disappeared. And by disappeared, I mean you're walking down the street, the police pick you up, they don't tell your family, they don't tell your lawyer, and they can hold you. They did this to the highest paid female movie star in the world. They picked her up, and for 6 months, nobody knew where she was. And they did it in part to say to everybody else in China, if we can disappear her, imagine what we can do to you. And so I think in that sense, if you believe in freedom, if you want America to remain a country independent of Chinese domination, then that's why I wrote Trump versus China. I think it's the most important single challenge of our lifetime.
It is. You're right. And that's why I keep bringing up this quote from Xi Jinping. You have to understand who's on the other side of this table. This is the president of China threatening people. If you get involved in any of the Hong Kong protesters, your bones will be shattered to dust. The president of China said it.